The RTE Rugby Podcast, sponsored by Canterbury, proud official kit suppliers to the Irish men and women's rugby teams.
And you're welcome to the RTE Rugby Podcast as we return for yet another season and the start of the United Rugby Championship. First round kicks off this weekend. We're very excited as RTE to have live coverage throughout the season of games involving Irish provinces. Once again, Bernard Jackman is with us. Bernard, how are you?
Very good, thank you. Yeah, glad to be back after a few weeks off and looking forward to the URC starting.
It seems like the last season has only barely finished up, isn't it? We're straight back into it. I mean,
yeah, it has gone quickly, and I feel for some of the players. I know the Irish lads who are in the British and Irish Lions are back deep into their pre-season at the moment, and yeah, going through the ringer. So look at, I just can't wait to see the action start. And see how the provinces are shaping up, and obviously with the 4 new teams in the URC, it's hopefully going to be a better competition.
You were a sucker for pre-season, weren't you? You loved the old pre-season.
I was always. I think on one pre-season I missed out in Fat Club, which is the punishment for those pre-seasons where you come back having missed your body fat target. So I used to have extra conditioning 3 days a week at 6:30. Fasted conditioning, which was enough in itself. Never mind what you had to do after. So look, I'm glad those calipers are gone and no longer a feature. Just my waistline.
Yeah, exactly. Well, anyone who reads the Sunday Independent, you should check out. Bernard has a new regular column every Sunday, and he did write a good bit about this last weekend about Fat Club as well. That just means to me, Bernard, that you enjoyed your break all the more, which means you were well rested and ready for a new season.
It's all about well-being and balance, Hugh. You know, I was doing it 20 years ago before there were common phrases, but I wasn't alone. I had lots of front row colleagues, and the odd back who enjoyed himself used to join us for a while, but they used to get out pretty quick. To be honest, we were often in there for the whole summer. But look, I was always glad when matches came around, and that's why I played rugby. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we all are just ready to get stuck in. Delighted to say as well, we have Jarred Wright, who's a South African rugby journalist. Obviously, most of our listeners will be familiar with Ultimate Rugby and indeed have it. And we're delighted to have Jarred to give us the South African viewpoint. How are you, Jarred?
Well, thanks to you. Exciting week here in South Africa. We've got some big games this weekend.
Yeah, I imagine the United Rugby Championship probably won't be the main focus for you guys this weekend. But nevertheless, we might get into the New Zealand match a little bit later on. What is the mood in South Africa like, Jarred, ahead of the United Rugby Championship? It's a kind of a strange one for us because we've had this Celtic League relaunch so many times now. We're all keeping our fingers crossed that this one actually works out and is a success. But what's the mood in South Africa like?
Yeah, well, I think the South Africans will always take up extra opportunity to light a fire and watch rugby. So, yeah, overall, I think a lot of the fans are excited in seeing how we fare against the Northern Hemisphere sides. And, I think they'll miss Super Rugby, but I think it's a new challenge, and I think everyone's looking forward to it. We've seen some of our South Africans move abroad and star there and impress, and I think the mood is a positive one and one that we want to make the most of.
And that's good to hear, Birch. I guess from an Irish and a Celtic League standpoint that there is a bit of excitement in South Africa about it, because this league is very much dependent on the South Africa bringing their A game and the South African sides fronting up and making it a competitive league, if you like. Yeah,
look, they're trying to find the right formula for this competition, and they have been, as you said, Hugh, since probably conception. I think there's a better chance of this working out with the 4 franchises that are in it now, and that's not no disrespect to the Cheetahs or the Kings, but financially and in terms of probably history, well, certainly the Kings didn't. They didn't have the support base to be competitive, and it was really a damp squid, to be honest. And even though the budgets in the Northern Hemisphere are significantly higher, we have to understand that the Sharks and the Bulls in particular do have financial backing that will hopefully help them build squads that are more than competitive. And I suppose the big thing for me is I've no doubt when the Springboks come back, these teams will be able to go toe to toe with the Northern Hemisphere teams. But I'd be interested from Jarred's point of view in terms of how are they going to do over the first few weeks, because unfortunately, our perception and Irish rugby fans and Welsh rugby fans, etc., perception of the strength of the 4 teams will be based upon what they see over the next month, even though, we know that there's more cattle coming as such. So
Yeah.
how do you think they'll fare? Are they ready to go week 1, week 2?
Yeah, well, I think the Bulls and the Sharks will be a lot more prepared than the other two. But yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head that missing some of the Springboks will certainly hurt our sides. I think the Sharks and the Bulls are a lot more well prepared. Bulls have quite a bit of squad depth, and Jake White running the show there, he's always going to run a good team. And the Sharks are sort of piecing together their own dynamite side, if I can put it that way. And yeah, I think they'll be able to front up somewhat. There's been a few player movements that should work out well for them as well. But yeah, for the other two, for the Stormers, I'm not as positive for, unfortunately. And the same goes for the Lions. They're both in sort of transitional stages of their coaching structures, and yeah, the Stormers always have a bit of a gnarly pack, and they should be helped there, but I think they're lacking a bit out wide.
Bernard, does the goodwill, do you think, from Celtic League supporters this side stretch a bit insofar as that? I think, would they be happy if they had the top two sides in South Africa being competitive this season and allowing the Stormers and the Lions time to develop? Do you think that they would take that for the first season or two, given time to bed in, or do you think really that, look, the fans here are just getting a bit sick and tired of, I guess, the non-competitive nature of this league, and they want the South African sides to front up and bring what they can bring from the get-go?
Yeah, look, I think if one of them was even like a contender to win it, I think that would be enough year one. And I think I actually wished that maybe the European teams travel to South Africa first. I think particularly with the Boks away, I think that's going to be hugely difficult to go down there and win. Even with in the lines, at altitude, even though the team are obviously in transition a little bit. So it's just, the big thing for me is that they don't ship Haydens in the first couple of rounds and people get turned off. I mean, there's huge excitement about people going back to stadiums. The big problem has been, if you went to watch Leinster or Munster, most weeks in the old Pro 14 at home, you knew they were going to win. It was only the odd time there was a shock, and you want to go to games believing it's going to be competitive and that the outcome is in doubt. And I think I'd be shocked. I'd be disappointed if that didn't happen this weekend. But I think from an Irish supporter's point of view, as long as they can see that at least one of them is a contender and that they're going to develop and get better with the experience of dealing with Northern Hemisphere refereeing, dealing with Northern Hemisphere style of play, adding to their squad depth, I think it'll be fine, because this is probably the last chance, to get it right. I think if this doesn't happen, there's going to be more talk about a British and Irish league, and this is the best chance of kind of having our own competition and making a successful one.
And I guess, Jarred, for it to be a success as well, we need performances on the pitch. Obviously, competitive games bring about their own sense of sport, and that's great. But I'm wondering how much the South African fans will buy into it. I mean, I remember even when the Southern Kings and the Cheetahs joined the Pro 14 as it was originally, we would watch games in South Africa, and you tune in, you'd have maybe 1,000, 2,000 people in this giant stadium, and just made for a terrible atmosphere. I'm wondering, is there a sense of going from Super Rugby now to this new United Rugby Championship? Is there a sense of anticipation or excitement among the supporters that they will buy into it as well?
Yeah, I think we haven't had any fans in the stadium since 2020. So I think the minute we are able to have people going back into the stands, we will have a more bloated crowd. And with the Blue Bulls especially being such a force now in South African rugby again, they have a massive supporter base, and they're very fickle in the sense that when they perform well, the stadium's packed, and when they're not, it's a little bit more empty. So yeah, with the Cheetahs and the Kings, the two stadiums are quite badly situated for the fans to actually get into the stands, and the four teams coming in now a lot more central and a lot more in your hubs. So I think we will definitely have more fans in the stands. And yeah, the minute it is open, we will have bigger crowds.
I think, Bernard, as well, from an Irish perspective, I've saw a lot written in the last couple of weeks about, if the South African sides bring a more competitive nature to the league, Leinster, Munster, Ulster in particular, we're going to have to pick stronger sides week in, week out. Like, they're not going to be able to rest as many players. And this player welfare system that the RFU have been cultivating, which I don't know, you can argue the successes or failures of it, might have to take a back seat. But do you believe that to be the case? Or do you believe that because a lot of these guys are essentially contracted to the RFU anyway, it doesn't matter how competitive the league is, the RFU will do what they want to do to look after their players as they see fit with regards to the national team. And whether or not the South African sides are competitive is a bit of a moot point.
Yeah, I think I think they will force stronger discussions, to be honest, Hugh. And the European format has changed as well, so it's going to be harder for Irish provinces to qualify for the European Cup, and that's very important for the financial well-being of the provinces. So, for example, take Connacht. They're building a new stadium. There's financial implications for that. To not be in the European Cup for them would be a blow to that. And the way the RFU are financially at the moment, post-COVID, I think that the financial side of it will potentially, play a part as well. Plus the pressure coming from the provinces and explaining how important it is. So there's less clashes this year as well. So, obviously there's a break for November. There's a break in Six Nations. So I would expect our international players to play a lot more. The downside of that is that I don't see it getting to the stage anymore where Leinster play 61 players in a season. I think that you can have a smaller squad, and there's going to be more pressure to perform, and there is going to be more pressure on the senior players. But look, that's what we want. When you buy a season ticket, you might have an interest in development and etc. But you want to see the
stars, right?
You want to see the stars. That's why they get paid the big money. That's why soccer, they sign Messi and Ronaldo, and you want to see the Johnny Sextons, the Jack Conans, the Peter Mannies, etc. play for the province. So I think it's a really good thing. And if we have to give a little on the player management, I don't think the Irish team have had the success, that warrants micromanaging every player on not even on an individual basis. It's very much a general graph, and everyone has to fit into that. So for me, playing rugby and playing matches is what these lads are built to do, and they should be allowed to play more often than they have been.
This is something I guess we've talked about a good bit on the podcast over the last season or two, Birch, as well, with Donald, about the player welfare system, and actually, what are the tangible benefits from it. And you can make the argument, okay, fine, it helps Leinster do well in the Pro 14 or Pro 16 as it has been. As regards to Ireland, okay, under Joe Schmidt they did well, but overall for the Irish team, when we keep hearing that the English players and the French players are being bashed up day in, day out in this really competitive league, yet they're able to come into their national setup, it doesn't seem to hurt them too much here. I just wonder, have we been looking at this player welfare system that the RFU have kind of insisted upon through rose-tinted glasses a little bit too much?
Yeah, I think it needs a serious re-examination. I mean, if we were doing well at World Cups and we were, top two every year in the Six Nations, I would say, well, okay, the results are there to speak for themselves. And also there's a fallacy that, playing less will extend your career. Like, it's great we have Johnny Sexton playing, post 35, but Duane Vermeulen, who's obviously signed for Ulster, he's been doing a shuttle seasons. He's been playing Super Rugby in Japan, playing international rugby. He's played the top 14. He's played in, while he played international rugby championship, etc. Like, it is possible. There's guys like Simon Shaw, etc., Bakis Boda, who've come to France at the end of their career and went to play 2 or 3 more years. So I don't think that the story or the narrative that we're told that, oh, this is going to extend your career, is actually even proven either. So I'd love to see it re-examined. And I just on Duane Vermeulen, I mean, what does Jarred think about him as a signing for Ulster? Has he still got good rugby left in him?
Oh, 100%. He's one of those special players. I think he's very highly rated in South Africa, obviously. But yeah, it's more than just his performances that he brings on the pitch for a team like Ulster. I think it's you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's David McMahon. That's the young Irish number 8 there at Ulster. He'll bring unbelievable knowledge for him, and he's actually one of the brightest minds in the Springbok squad. Jacques Nienaber speaks highly of him as not just a leader, but an analytical player that constantly questions the coaches in the right kind of manner and comes up with problems with solutions to some of their problems. So I think it's an unbelievable signing from Ulster, and he's sort of in that space where they're not going to expect him to play every single game, but the big games that he does play, he will produce in those games.
And Ulster have, Jarred, a bit of a long tradition at this stage now of a close association with South African players, particularly kind of frontline players who they would have signed as key players first and foremost. But equally, if you look at, the influence that maybe Patrick Vandenberg had, or Ruan Pienaar in particular, on younger players and Ulster coming through, Duane Vermeulen, again, with an Ulster pack that is very young, that's quite inexperienced, that seems to have a good bit of talent, but could really learn from someone like Duane Vermeulen. You'd imagine that it's the perfect signing in many ways for them.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, I don't think Duane Vermeulen would sign any contract with any team that he and would say, okay, I'm just here to take a back seat. He'll be there to play for that number 8 jumper, and the younger guys will have to take it off of him or compete with him for it. And you're 100% right. So Ruan Pienaar and even Johan Muller were massive players there at Ulster, and I don't doubt for a second that Vermeulen will be in that same category, even if it is just a 2 years stint with him.
Yeah, absolutely. Just on that then, earlier this week, Michael Glennon of our RTE Rugby production staff spoke to Ulster boss Dan McFarland and asked him, first of all, how the signing of Duane Vermeulen came about. Have a listen to this.
Well, it came about, I suppose the history is pretty clear. Like Marcel went back to South Africa. We were always in the market for a difference-making player. We signed Leone, and then really unfortunately, the medical, from our perspective, didn't work out, and we decided at that time, rather than diving straight back into the market and signing the first player that became available, we would be very specific about the type of player that we wanted, and that was somebody who we felt was really going to make a difference to us. And it didn't have to be in any particular aspect. We wanted them to be a back rower, but we wanted them to be an influential back rower. And so when we first looked through that the names on the list were really good players, don't get me wrong, but we have a lot of really good back rowers here, so we just held our breath and kept our powder dry, and then one day Bryn stuck his head into my office and said, what about Duane Vermeulen? And I said, yes please, and Bryn really took it from there, and I think Duane said it in his quote. A lot of good conversations around with the agent and with Bryn around what as a club we offer, and what part he could play in that, and well, we are where we are in terms of what Duane can offer. Well, he's a World Cup winning number 8. He was MVP in a World Cup final. He's as a particular player. He's obviously a really big-bodied back rower. We don't have other big body. We've got really good players, but we don't have big-bodied back rowers. That's what Marcel was. Duane brings that. He also brings a lot of game nous. Obviously a really smart player. And you can see from the fact that the Springboks was so keen to get him back into their team. The kind of influence that he is able to have on the game and the people around him. So, you know, it doesn't really need me to explain that he is and has been a top quality player for a long time.
I know when Ulster fell short a couple of times over the last season, when it looked as if they were in quite good positions to move on to the next step, are you happy that Duane is somebody who can really help to bridge that gap?
I don't think any one player is going to bridge that gap. I think that you know, on the couple of occasions or the few occasions we've been within reaching distance of trophies, you know, it's us as a team that have fallen short. You know, and that's progress. You know, it's, you know, that's the progression we're on. You know, I think we are a very good team, but the bottom line is, in any given competition, it's like in the URC this year, it'll be one team out of 16 teams that wins it. So, you know, you need to be a really good team, and two, you need a little bit of luck along the way, and you need to be able to produce the goods on the day. Is a player of Duane's quality going to add to that? Definitely. Do I think it's the answer that gets you over the line? No, it'll be whether we're better as a team, and he'll play a part in that.
Are you happy that they have got rid of the captain's challenge and the 20-minute red card? I know why you're smiling. And do you think it's good that they've kept on the dropout and the 50-22 or have introduced that? How do you feel about those rules?
Well, I don't want to. I don't want to commit myself too much to this, Michael, because when the captain's challenge came in, I actually said, "Oh yeah, that'll be a bit of fun," and then it was an absolute disaster, and we actually lost the game at home because of it. You know, fairly, but that was a terrible idea. That's all in hindsight, isn't it? You know, so I'm very glad that that's disappeared. The goal line dropout and the 50-22, like, we've obviously played a number of games there and a couple of games with the 50-22, and you know, I quite like them. I don't know whether you watched the Bristol Saracens game from Friday night, and I don't know whether it was the 50-22 rule that was that led to there being just a plethora of kicks in the first half. I'm hoping that that's not what's going to happen, because that's not what it's designed for. It's designed to try and open up the field to allow you to counterattack. But it remains to be seen. As I say, I don't want to totally commit on it. Let's see how the season unfolds. And we win a few games using the 50-22 rule, and I'll say it's a brilliant idea.
Good stuff. Thanks. Best of luck for the season, Dan.
Okay, so first, just before we move on, I mean, look, it's the type of player, I guess, that Dan would have been crying out for over the last season or so. That big, strong, physical, ball-carrying player. When Marcel Coetzee announced that he was leaving, there was a lot of dismay around Ravenhill that they were going to lose a player of his caliber. But this is obviously a better signing.
Well, yeah. Well, it is. I think it's a better signing, and this isn't any disrespect to Marcel, but I would totally double down on what Jarred said there about, you know, his influence, Duane's influence off the field. A friend of mine, Franz Ludica, who used to coach the Bulls, had him in the Kubota Spears, and he said he was like an extra coach. And, you know, in some way, sometimes you hear that and I go, oh no, you don't need an extra coach. But by all accounts, his ability, not just to go, oh, we do this in the box, or we did this in Toulon, it'll work. He's able to go, right, you know, with the personnel we have, that's not possible. So let's just try and try this. And plus his consistency, plus his composure. He's like, you know, let's be honest, the kicking game is a big feature in the URC, and he's probably the best number 8 in the world in the backfield in terms of dealing with those high balls. And we saw how the Lions targeted his replacement during the Lions series. So, you know, look, I think when they signed Leone Nakawara, I felt that was a mistake. I felt that was a big name, great highlights video, but his best days were behind him. And I think him failing the medical is probably a blessing in disguise. And then they've just been patient and just waited. And players like Duane Vermeulen don't really come on the market, you know, very often. And I just think it's a brilliant bit of business. I know Dan is crediting Bryn Cunningham. But I think, you know, a contract like that takes a big financial commitment as well. So the board of Ulster and the chief financial officer deserve a lot of credit as well. But I just think, you know, he can build a team around him. Plus, Ulster, let's remember, have put a lot of development into a bunch of young players, like Balacloon, like Hume, etc., who we saw play for Ireland in the summer, and looked like they're just about ready to step up. So having, you know, a senior player, a world-class player like him around him could be, Ulster weren't far away. He could be the difference in terms of, you know, getting a trophy.
Absolutely, yeah, 100%. Jarred, I did have a bit of a smile on my face as I was going through your Twitter feed this morning, and I saw you picked your all-time favourites between South Africa and New Zealand. I think you have 9 Springboks and 6 All Blacks in your best 15, which I'm sure was done as much as they are your favourites, also to wind up a few Kiwis, which is also a lot of fun. But look, it's a massive game this weekend. You must be looking forward to it.
Oh yeah, I can't wait. Yeah, we've had 2 disappointing games against Australia, but the Springbok team always pitches up against New Zealand. I think it was a couple of years back under Alistair Fitzgerald, and we got an absolute pump in New Zealand, and we came back and it was a 1 or 2 point game in Cape Town. So yeah, always exciting playing against the All Blacks, and yeah, it's probably our biggest test since the Lions tour, which seems like it was just yesterday.
What happened against Australia, and what has been the current mood around the South African team at the moment? I've been reading a lot of criticism about their lack of general attack play. We obviously saw, I guess, firsthand it's typical South African rugby against the Lions, very, very effective. But I wonder now, is there starting to be a little bit of unease about maybe the lack of variety and using the guys like Cheslin Colby, who we know are absolute superstars, and maybe using more of the width that you guys possess out there?
Yeah, well, it's probably saying Bernard can touch on a bit more in more detail than I could, but I sort of have the feeling with the Springboks at the moment that they are trying to change that narrative of their boring style of play, and Ninabe is trying to implement those attacking structures, and it's not something that comes easily for coaches. It takes a couple of games to get in, and I think it's a natural dip that the Springboks have taken. It's a bit of an unfortunate time just before a 100th Test match against the All Blacks, but it's a natural dip where you're trying to get those structures implemented, and it's just not coming off. Guys running a bit too wide and not lateral enough, and yeah, you're focusing so much on the attack that your defense slips off a bit, or your set pieces don't go quite right.
I'm not drawing a direct analogy here, Birch, but I do remember when Rob Penny came into the Munster setup. First of all, he was ripping up the Munster script, I guess, the 10-man rugby, the kind of very much forward domination. I remember seeing Donnacha O'Callaghan out in the wing a few times the first few games, and he just said, "What the hell am I doing out here?" But you know, with any kind of revolution, with an attack like this, or if you're really trying to, I guess, change the blueprint fundamentally, it does take time, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, and it's the hardest thing, or the area of the game takes the longest to perfect. And also, people need to understand, if you mess around or try and evolve your attacking game, it has a direct influence on how you defend as well. And the Boks were so happy and comfortable in that set piece kicking defense, and how they all joined up, and they were able to score tries for sure, particularly off transition. But now it's different. Now they're actually trying to be a team that holds the ball for longer, plays a little bit deeper in terms of territory, and it's just has them a little bit out of sync. Plus, I'll be honest, I think if you go into Rassie and Jack Nienaber's mindset, you know, when they got the team, they were in a bit of disarray. Target was World Cup, right? So huge target. They won the World Cup. Then they obviously would have liked to evolve their attacking game before the Lions tour. COVID, no games. So what do you do in a Lions tour? You don't try and develop things. You go to the tried and tested. They won the Lions tour. Now they probably, you know, ideally you don't do it against Australia. You do it for guys, and you know they haven't had that. They don't have the opportunity, so they're doing it against, you know, the Wallabies, who look like they're finding their mojo a little bit. And but I don't know if it's like the All Black Springbok test in itself is so big. I would be maybe disappointed if they didn't go back to type a little bit and just tried to bring the best possible game plan to contain or beat the All Blacks. And that attack can evolve, over the next 12 months to 18 months, because let's be honest, for me, I admire the Boks. I have admired the Boks for being very comfortable in what they do. And I thought some of the banter and the abuse back and forth between the British and Irish Lions fans and the South African fans, it was quite heated at times around.
Who's the most boring?
I know, and it was boring. It was boring, but and again, I understand why Gatland doubled down, etc. But at least the Boks are successful at doing what they do, and it's up to other teams to expose that. So, the FA are trying to evolve, and some of that might be down to the way the game is being refereed now, and laws are coming in. But I wouldn't mind. All I want to see is a good test this weekend, and a competitive test. And if the Boks have to go back a step to go forward 2 steps in the future, I understand that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think anyone minds South Africa doing what they are best at. I think the problem on this side was watching Warren Gatland try to beat South Africa at their own game plan, which just, I guess, didn't make a huge amount of sense. Just a quick word about Australia from both of you as well, because Jarred, my God, and they do seem like a side reborn at the moment. Quade Cooper is playing some of the best rugby I think I've ever seen him play. Corin Betty is probably one of the most clinical wingers in the world right now, his all-round game as well. And it's brilliant to see Australia back playing good rugby. I think the world, and certainly as we head towards France 2023, world rugby needs Australia to be back on top, right?
Yeah, I can't agree more. I think everyone was crying out after the 2015 World Cup for a good Springbok team to come back after we lost the first test against Ireland down here, and then we had that horrid time in 2017. And the same sort of narrative follows the Wallabies. We want the 3 big Southern Hemisphere nations to be at the top of their game and test in the North just as much. So yeah, it was fantastic what Dave has been able to do at the Wallabies. And the Wallabies are kind of a weird team because they're not as physically dominant as the Springboks, but they're not as athletic as the All Blacks. So I think they've hit the sweet spot now where they weighing up those two and then adding a smarter way of playing and potentially changing their game to their opposition and outsmarting them in that way.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant to see, I have to say. We can't wait for the test this weekend. We're also very much looking forward to live coverage of our first game in the United Rugby Championship. It is Munster against the Sharks from Thomond Park from 7 o'clock on Saturday night, first game of the new season. And as we said, hopefully the United Rugby Championship proves to be everything that we hope it might be. Delighted to welcome on board for the season as well our new podcast sponsors in Canterbury. Bernard Jackman has just insisted on a brand new pair of boots. I don't know whether you're going to get back training, Birch, or what's that for? Maybe just give them to your son Ben, or what you're going to do with those boots. Maybe paint
golden oldies, protective maybe. That's the only rugby I'll be playing.
Listen, my thanks, Jarred. Thank you so much. We might have you back again soon to see how the championship is getting on in South Africa. But thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Cheers. And thanks to Birch as well. We're back next week. Talk to you then.
The RTE Rugby Podcast, sponsored by Canterbury, proud official kit suppliers to the Irish men and women's rugby teams.